Hello, it's Matt Linklater. I've been featured in Inc. magazine on ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC. My mission is to change the financial landscape of America. So when you think about it as a leader, you have to push your team's envelope each and every day. You have to elevate their standards. This is really about how do you maximize your time. So how do you do it within your business? How do you figure out who your target market is? And ultimately, you want to narrow that focus, don't you? So how do you push beyond your emotions and kind of visualize your success? And you have to be congruent, one of thought, one of word, and one of action. The quality of your life is found in the rituals that you keep. The quality in your business is found in the rituals that you keep for your business. Exie, say I can.
I can.
Say I must.
I must.
Say I am.
I am.
Say Axie Unstoppable.
Stop.
Hey, it's Matt Linklater here. I want to talk to you about the importance of having standard operating procedures within your business. We call them SOPs. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I was listening to a lot of podcasts and reading books about Navy SEALs. Just was kind of, I get in these trends where I just like to listen to one thing, fully submerge myself, and figure out what the commonalities are. So I was looking to listen to a lot of Navy SEAL stuff. And they were talking about standard operating procedures. And the biggest thing for standard operating procedures is they drill all these baseline procedures, because they say when you're out there and you're in the jungle, you're doing a mission, is that when you have the standard operating procedures, you have them all nailed down, you can adjust to the variables. So you try to eliminate all variables by having standard operating procedures, because if you can drill for all the known knowns, if you will, or the known unknowns, then when the unknown unknowns hit you, you already have the baseline set, so you can adapt to them more simply and more strategically. And so how do you have standard operating procedures in everything you do and every part of your business? And let me explain why this is so important to me. It happened in my business, but let me tell you a little bit about what happened over the last few days. So we were flying out of Duluth, Minnesota, and you're going to say, I know that's the problem. And that was the problem. We were flying out of a small airport. But it does not give an excuse to not have a standard operating procedure. So I'm flying with my 4-year-old, my 20-month-old, my wife, and so we get up to check in, and we have to check our bags. And so when we're checking our bags, there's one lady working the desk. Now, okay, it's Duluth, I get it. But the people in front of us had a problem. And they had a problem where their flights got canceled. They're trying to reroute through Chicago to get to Connecticut. It's not even here nor there what the problem was. But here was the problem. There was one lady working the desk, and she was not ready to handle that type of problem. Number one, I'm going to tell you the rest of the story. She's just not a great problem solver. But number two is, if somebody comes with a 45-minute problem or a problem that needs to be solved, they need to have a different operational procedure, a different standard operational procedure that they could hand that person off to somebody on the phone or somebody at a different location, so she could handle all the things going on at that location. So that took 45 minutes. I got a 4-year-old and a 20-month-old running from one end to the other end of the freaking terminal, or of the check-in area, just to kind of get their energy out. They can't sit still. It was insane. Added more problems to it is the people, then finally they moved on, 45 minutes, literally. The next people come up, took her 15 minutes to check their bags. Now, then we get up there, and she's about halfway through, and we're at the 7-minute mark. And the only reason I'm timing her is because all the problems we've already had. So the biggest problem is she did not have systems and processes. She did not have standard operating procedures. So one thing is, she was taking out the tags to put on our bags, and she forgot which bags they went with because she didn't have a system of where to place the bags, where to place the tags that are corresponding. Now, that's not even half the problem. So then we get into the terminal, and everything, I won't even talk to you about the restaurant in the terminal there, or whatever, that we're trying to get some food at, that shut down because a plane was coming. But so now we get on the plane. So finally we're on the plane, but they're having air conditioning problems. Which is fine. I've had things happen to me before. I'm not even upset about that. I'm not even upset about any of the situation. I'm just talking about standard operating procedures and how to have SOPs and how it could have been solved here, and then how I actually solved it for the ladies. And So what happened was we're on the plane, air conditioning's not working. They deplaned us, and we had to go and get off and go back into the terminal. So the air conditioning wasn't working. The mechanic had already went home, not understanding again why they would send a mechanic home before the plane left. However, I get it. This doesn't happen very often, right? So the mechanic comes, takes them 10-15 minutes to get there, and then they find out that they need a part, and they have to bring that up from Minneapolis, which is a 4-hour ride. It's not going to be there till 1 a.m., blah, blah, blah. So then they cancel our flight. But that's where the standard operating procedures crushed these two ladies working there. They were not trained properly, and they didn't have standard operating procedures. So the one lady gets on the overhead, the microphone, and says, okay, the flight's going to be canceled. I'm going to have your bags brought back up. The ones that were gate checked, I'm having brought back up to the gate. The other bags will be down on the carousel. And we're gonna try to rebook you for the next flight, and we're going to get you some hotel vouchers. But that's where it went wrong. She said she was going to do all this stuff, but didn't have any plan to do it or any orderly sequence to do it. So as they were just kind of messing with people and talking to people and I just heard the chaos between these two ladies. So here's the one thing that kind of set me off, that I stepped in and handled the situation, but they should already had the standard operating procedures. So what happened was the lady was talking about giving us vouchers so we could stay at a hotel, which is fantastic, great. But the first people that were up there in line, she wasn't giving them a voucher. She was actually trying to book their hotel for them. What do you guys want? A double bed? Do you want 2 double beds? Do you want a queen size bed, king size bed? So she's calling the hotel to do this. So I stepped in because there's 50 people in line, and then another 50 who just didn't get in line because we know why sit in line, just not what we do. So instead, so they said they're going to rebook our flights. They said they're going to give us vouchers, and then they said they're going to bring our bags. So instead of waiting, my wife got on the phone and booked our next flight. So when I booked our flight for the next morning and took control of the situation rather than in the chaos. So when she started booking the hotel for the other person, I stepped in and I said, wait a minute, ma'am. And people were yelling at me that I was cutting, and I wasn't cutting, I was trying to solve the situation, and they were happy for it in the end. A couple people were yelling at me. But I went up, I said, ma'am, you can't book hotels for these people. And I said, well, are the bags coming up? Because they haven't come up yet. And they were just kind of looked at me like, oh, well, what do we do first? So I pointed to the one lady, I said, lady, or ma'am, I said, why don't you go and get our bags, tell the baggage handlers to bring our bags back up, tell them to make sure they're down at the carousel, everybody be happy there. I said, man, you can't book hotels. I've had this happen before. You just need to start printing the vouchers. So start printing the vouchers. And then another baggage person says, hey, I know how to do that. Went to another terminal, started printing the vouchers. So they should have standard operating procedures that handle this. So what happens when a flight gets canceled at night? This has happened to me 2 or 3 times. One time I was in Greenville, South Carolina, and the exact same thing happened to me. Well, I think they were just trying to cancel the flight because there's only 10 of us on that flight. But they went into kind of the mode on how to handle the situation. So what happens is this is chaos. These are variables coming at the people. None of us are happy. I got one guy yelling at me that I'm cutting in line when I'm trying to solve it. This lady hears it. This lady has to deal with me. But the reality is if they just had standard operating procedures, they could have handled every variable. But it added more chaos because you had 30 people yelling at them and they didn't have any standard operating procedures. So no matter what you do, you have to have contingencies and standard operating procedures for everything. And let me explain how this happened in my business because I'm not immune to this, right? We have standard operating procedures. So somebody books an appointment. What's the standard operating procedure that happens? We have an appointment. What's the standard operating procedure after that? And then we have another appointment. What's the standard operating procedure after that? Now, certainly, we have to move the parts to make it more linear and make it easier on the client. But we have this all ironed out for us. So we were doing merchant processing we do merchant processing. And so we're doing one for a great lady. I mean, she's been a client of mine for 8 years. She is awesome. Her business is awesome. And but she has a high-risk merchant processing. I won't even go into it, but it was coded high risk by the underwriters at the merchant processing companies. And so, long story short, is we weren't familiar with this process because we don't do a lot of high-risk merchant processing. But for me, I always try to make things really linear. And so let me explain what made her mad and how I know this makes people mad. And I just couldn't help it because we went to a new provider. I didn't know the process. And so now we got a call with the guy. We're going to set up what's the process and get it going. But here's what happened. So every time the underwriter wants something new from the client, they want something new. It takes a couple of days for the client to respond. The client responds, and all of a sudden they want something else new. It takes a couple of days for the client to respond. And so now it's like every 5 days, the underwriter is looking for something new. You can't do that to your clients. You have to know on the front end, what do you need from your client? What's their standard operating procedure so everything's completely linear and you get all the required information from a client and or whatever you need. Because then if something does go wrong, then it's easier to adapt and the client won't get as mad. So it's really important to have standard operating procedures for every appointment that you have, every product you have, everything, every time you implement a product. And so what are those for your business? And it's really just sitting down and saying, okay, so when this happens, what needs to happen? And just start whiteboarding it through a checklist, or if you will, through standard operating procedures. So come up with 7 to 10 things, or as many things that need to happen, who needs to do each process, where it needs to come from. Ours comes out of our CRM. It triggers phone calls and things like that. But like I said, on the merchant processing side, we didn't know the process, and it kind of jumbled up. She's a great client. She was definitely mad at me. I think some of her confidence might have been shaken in that one spot, but we do everything else so right. We fixed her accounting, we do taxes, we do everything. But it was that one piece that will upset. Same thing recently on a payroll. Now the clients didn't get upset, but we implement payroll for people and the new corporations we set up. And my accountant sent some questions, and then a few days later, she had more questions. And I said, well, if you can really take all those questions at once and give them to a client, say, hey, I need these 5 things, because when you go back and forth, it causes a little discomfort for the client and for the people. So a standard operating procedure would ultimately fix all that. And so when I think about it, what does it really do for your business? Standard operating procedures cuts down on money lost, and time lost, because you're going to condense time frames on maybe your sales cycle. You'll condense time frames on your service cycle. You'll spend less time servicing a client if you have everything ironed out. So ultimately, you need standard operating procedures. And just as Navy SEALs and Army Rangers, this is life and death per se, because they're out there, they're fighting, and they need to save time, they need to cut down on time, they need to cut down on risk, they need to cut down on their exposure, and that's ultimately what it does. And so how do you put those standard operating procedures so when things do go wrong, it's a small adjustment that you need to respond to, it's a small variable that you need to respond to, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel every time. And so 1, come up with standard operating procedures, and 2, you need to train people. And so what standard operating procedures do is you put all standard operating procedures down for the known knowns and some known unknowns. It's the unknown unknowns that are going to throw you off, is why you need standard operating procedures in everything that you do in your business. And so I encourage you to take the time in every step of your business, what needs to happen, and list that out for your employees. Work with your employees to have them list everything that needs to happen. So now you have standard operating procedures. You'll make your clients happier. You'll save more time and save more money. So just wanted to share with you the story that happened to me over the last week. And I got to tell you, let me finish the story of the trip. I want to tell you though, as everything, we make it fun. So we got to a hotel. Worked with another lady in line there. We partnered. We got a shuttle set up. So my kids and everybody were in the shuttle. We got to the hotel. Being the crazy dad I am, it was 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. I was trying to get them to go into the pool and the water slide because, hey man, this is fun. This is the memory you have. Remember that time? They did not want to go down the water slide. They did not want to go in the pool. We got into the hotel room finally, and I had them jumping on the bed and having a ton of fun jumping around. And we got them up, so they went to bed at about 11 o'clock. I got them up at 4:45 the next morning, and we got them down to the entryway of the hotel, and the restaurant there, they had Cheerios and orange juice. We do not let our kids eat Cheerios because of the gluten in them, not to get all crazy. But that day, obviously, you could have Cheerios. They brought them down. They were psyched to have Cheerios. They love orange juice. We got them their orange juice, and they were fired up to be on the plane again and going back to the airport. So it was a seamless trip, easy. You know, this happens all the time, or things like this happen when you fly. So we made the best of it and had a great time, and really appreciate and enjoy the time with my 4-year-old and 20-month-old, no matter where we are in the world. That's what my whole intention is, to make them, to enjoy the time, not necessarily make them happy, but to enjoy the time we have together. And, you know, maybe if they had standard operating procedures, we wouldn't have had as much fun, but it would cut down on a lot of stress, a lot of energy, and they would have a smoother, United would be more smoothly ran, if you will. So hopefully that helps you out. Get standard operating procedures. Chunk out your business into each one of its subsegments, whether it be first appointment, second appointment, third appointment, servicing the client, the different areas you have to serve your client in the different parts of your business, and come up with standard operating procedures. Whiteboard it with your employees. Get them to memorize it. Make sure they have it in front of them, and make sure they follow standard operating procedures. They'll be able to adapt quicker to those unknown unknowns and those variables that are thrown at them on a daily basis. Hey, go out there and crush it today.
Axie,
Amen.
say I can.
I can.
Say I must.
I must.
Say I am.
I am.
Say Axie Unstoppable.
Example.